Welcome in to First Things First. I'm Sarah Kustok filling in for Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. Nick Wright, how you guys doing? It is wonderful to have you back.
Doing well. Good to see you again, brother.
Good, brother.
Enjoyed
Knock
the
over
week.
my coffee and everything.
I'm not going to hit your coffee. Sarah, thank you so much for last week.
Oh, are you kidding?
Helping out along with Gottlieb and Broussard, but it is very good to be back.
I ain't into thanking people for they getting compensated for it, so I'm glad y'all could work
That's what-
last
Let me
week.
just say, I was glad to be here, but I'm glad
Cheers.
both of you are back. And we're going to start, well, go ahead.
Where you want to start?
No, I was
I want to start where you were at.
To quote Don Draper.
Who's my fill-in?
Who's your fill-in?
Because I used to be with a fair-skinned guy sitting over here. Now I'm with a guy that's chocolate.
By the way, America, the over-under we set was 92 seconds before Cris made a tan joke, and it only took him 63. So
You look great. It's
thank
great.
you
It's
so
glowing.
much.
You're
How do you
glowing.
like your coffee, dog?
I
How you like your partner?
I tried to
Dog.
keep up.
How you like your beans roasted? Dark.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, and we're going to start where Cris Carter was this weekend. Canton, Ohio, where they inducted the 2018 class into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was highlighted with greats like Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher, Brian Dawkins, and Randy Moss. Cece, you, of course, were in attendance. How special was this weekend?
All the Hall of Fame weekends are very, very special. They have little things, little sub-stories, though. This year, I thought it was a combination. This might be one of the greatest classes that we've ever had inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The great stories from Kramer with the Packers in his long wait. We have a lot of Packers that are in. I know Nick is into Dr. Doom.
Robert Brazil, man.
I mean, meeting his
Oilers,
family,
great.
spending the whole weekend with his family. He was a blessing. I believe like him and I will be lifelong friends, father and mother, 84, 85, scooting around Canton. Like, man, what y'all been waiting on? Like, we've been ready for this, like, ready to throw a party. And then, of course, the headliners in Urlacher, Ray Lewis, and Randy Moss. It was a very, very special weekend for my new classmates, for my new
Hall of Fame brothers.
Hall of Fame brothers. And then, of course, with T.O. not being there was great discussions about what we'll do moving forward as far as the Hall of Fame, in case someone wanted to follow up on what T.O. had did.
What I think is so cool about this is just watching from afar. Listen, there is no such thing as a perfect speech because everyone wants speeches to be shorter or to be what they would do, and there's no such thing as a perfect speech. But what all of these men had the ability to do is, for one last time, and I know like Randy's still on TV and Ray's with us on TV, so a lot of these guys have not moved out of the spotlight, but for one last time.
There is no spotlight like that spotlight.
Exactly.
Even when you're working in national telecast and everything, having 22,000, the largest crowd that we've had at Tom Benson Stadium. So that national spotlight, man, it's even bigger than being on TV.
Well, and because when we're on TV right now, there's other sports shows on TV. Like when Randy, in that moment, the entire sports world stops and pays attention to you one last time. And I think it's got to be such a cool thing. Go ahead.
And we're very, very fortunate that we got some of the behind-the-scenes video from the Hall of Fame. I was able to get them to make 9 minutes of stuff that some publicly seen. Some of this stuff has not been seen. So to have it in the show, be able to share it with our fans and everything, I think was really special. Because the weekend in itself and the stories to football heaven, all these guys had a tremendous journey. None of these guys, when they were born, like, okay, they're going to end up in the Hall of Fame. So I think the uniqueness of all the stories was fabulous.
Did it feel, there's so much discussion around how special this class is. You've been there before, obviously getting inducted, but the years following, did it feel different?
No, it felt the same. We knew that there's always certain things that you have to address, if that being even when the concussions, if that being the protests. We, at the Ray Nitschke Luncheon, when we get together, we typically address those things, and this year was no different. We addressed the elephant in the room, Terrell Owens, as far as what we're going to do moving forward, got the opinions of the Hall of Famers that were in the room. So it was the same. It was the same, even, and this was just another issue that we had to address.
Well, I think when Sarah says that, because I know we're going to talk about the TO stuff later, different as far as the caliber, when you said one of the best classes ever, when you have and so my guess is, I'm not going to speak for you here, but I've heard you talk about the Hall enough to know that once you're in the Hall of Fame, there is no tiers of the hall. There is no hierarchy of the hall.
Right.
You guys are all on equal playing field. That's what Cris always, your line about the barbershop debates. Like, how good was Cris Carter? Well, he's a Hall of Famer. Like, it is the statement that ends the debates. From a guy who's not in it, who does do, like, look at things in a more of a ranking historical perspective, what is true is what this class has is arguably the greatest middle linebacker ever, and certainly one of the greatest of his, the greatest of his generation in Ray Lewis, and then another damn good inside linebacker in Brian Urlacher. It's got the two of the three most statistically accomplished receivers in Randy and T.O., even if that T.O. wasn't there. And that's not even to mention Brian Dawkins, who was a generational safety. Robert Brazil, who I thought, my time in Houston, people love him there as an Oiler. He's one of those former Oilers that's almost a man without a country, because the Titans bought up all their rights, but the Titans don't really embrace those guys, and the Houston Texans aren't allowed to. And then, I mean, whether it's Bobby Beathard or Jerry Kramer, two guys that I think the average sport, even a pretty diehard football fan, and doesn't remember Jerry Kramer. And a lot of guys don't know Bobby Beathard. They're like, oh, is he related to CJ? Well, yeah, he actually is related to the...
Yeah, CJ was at the ceremony, too.
He got a day, Shanahan and the Niners gave him time off. So just as far as the totality of accomplishments, there is no bad Hall of Fame class, but there are particularly unbelievable ones. And this one, at least in my eyes, was.
Yeah, and there was a couple special moments that stood out. One, Bob Kraft, seeing him and Bill Belichick surprised Randy Moss on the stage before his speech. I took some pictures of that. That was a special moment. That touched Randy because he didn't think that they were going to be there. So that surprise visit from them. And then just seeing Dick Butkus address Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher. Now, I didn't know that Brian Urlacher and Dick Butkus, there might have been like a little tension there, just based on them being there in Chicago. But seeing Dick Butkus address these players, those are a couple of the really, really special behind-the-scenes moments that I really will take from this class of 2018.
When you look at the speeches, and thinking about when you were preparing your speech and the stage you're at, the moment that is, when does it hit you? When does it hit you, the totality of the moment as a player, as an inductee into the Hall of Fame, when you are about to give that speech?
Well, the speech, I call it the most important speech that you'll ever give. And the reason why, because you'll never get that stage again. And you know it's easy to mess up. You can miss a lot of people. There's really a lot of people to thank in doing it. So the magnitude of it, and the players that are already in the hall, we always tease the player, who's going to be the first to cry, and have you worked on your speech? Now, from a timing standpoint, how do you get your life story in 10 to 15 minutes? Well, Ray Lewis, 45 minutes. But how do you do that? It's almost impossible. Some of them did a great job at it. I'm into being on time. So I just don't believe you should have a long speech. It's very, very hard to do, and especially most of the time, this is kind of your swan song in sports. Like, we're honoring you, and after this, it's going to be hard for you to get any other honors. So it's very, very hard to be able to put all those words together in timely fashion.
One note about the speech that I think is interesting that I learned this morning talking to Cris is, when you are elected to the hall, you consider that like getting engaged to be married, and the speech is your wedding day. And by that I mean this: that you guys had a luncheon Friday.
Yes.
Were those guys Hall of Famers at that luncheon?
Not technically. The way the hall has been established, that's not, no.
No, you're not.
There's a series of events that must take place.
And the last and the final culmination is the revealing of the bust.
Yes.
You get the jacket on Friday.
Yes.
They reveal the bust, and then you do your speech. And it's after the speech that you're officially in the Hall of Fame. And so it's a very important moment. Like I had been calling, Randy, first ballot Hall of Famer. Technically, that wasn't true until Saturday. He had been elected, and so that's why.
And the reason for that is your bust is unveiled on Saturday night at the enshrinement. Then you have your speech, and then once your speech is ended, if you have a party that night, typically your bust will travel to your party. But that night will be the first night that your bust is in the hall. So that is the reason why the system of events with the selection at the Super Bowl and then the other things that happen afterwards, the ceremonies, that It's an amazing accomplishment.
And that's also, that last part is also why, and we'll talk more about T.O. later, why T.O. not participating in the ceremony was for the Hall of Famers maybe a bigger deal than to the general public, because he was waiving the moment where he actually got into the Hall of Fame. But we can spend time on that later.
An honor to sit next to a Hall of Famer. Coming up, why is Kelvin Benjamin ripping Cam Newton? That's next on First Things First. Moving on to Kelvin Benjamin, the Bills wide receiver spent his first 3.5 seasons in the league in Carolina. And it turns out he wasn't very fond of his old quarterback, Cam Newton. Benjamin told The Athletic, "I should have just been drafted by somebody else. I should have never went to Carolina. It was a bad fit from the get-go. If you would have put me with any other quarterback, let's be real, any other accurate quarterback like Rodgers or Eli Manning or Big Ben, anybody. Quarterbacks with knowledge that know how to place a ball and give you a better chance to catch the ball. It just felt like I wasn't in that position." Nick, are you surprised by Benjamin's comments about Cam?
I'm surprised about them for a number of levels. One is, just prior to giving these comments, Kelvin Benjamin got into a whole rift with some local media in Buffalo because the Bills had been ranked, I think by Pro Football Focus, the worst wide receiver group in the league. And he gave a whole thing about how this is how we feed our families, just a game to you guys. You guys just always want to rip us. And then he goes out and rips a former teammate. I'm also surprised because he says, if I would have been drafted by anybody else, well, he might have gotten a better quarterback. There are more quarterbacks in the league that are worse than Cam than better than Cam. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a less than 50% chance he would have had a better quarterback. But there's a 100% chance that if Carolina didn't draft him, he wouldn't have been a first-rounder. I mean, he was falling out of the first round. It was a reach by Carolina because they wanted a tall wide receiver for Cam who tends to throw high. Like, listen, Cam has a lot of flaws as a passer. Accuracy and fundamentals are the highest on the list. But it's an odd thing for a guy who's trying to prove himself in this league to be taking shots at his former teammates, and his head coach in Buffalo didn't seem to like these comments either.
No, I talked to Sean McDermott. He was at the Hall of Fame ceremony, so I did talk to him not only about their young quarterback and Josh Allen, but some of the things that were going on there. No quarterback, no coach wants this, and especially a wide receiver talking about his past team. Now, the irony to it is they play Carolina this week. And the coach wants everyone to be focused. So that's one of the reasons why the Cam Newton discussion came up. But if you're a football fan, if you just get beyond Kelvin Benjamin and Cam Newton, the truth of the matter is Kelvin Benjamin's saying the same thing that a lot of other people have said before. Now, you might not like Kelvin Benjamin. You might think there's wide receivers that are better. There are, but there is a lot of truth to what Cam and his inability to be consistent as a quarterback. Why should Cam ever be on the list with a guy like Deshaun Kaiser? Because that's the list that he was on last year. Now, you'll also be like, well, why is Cam on the list with Tom Brady, Alex Smith? Because he's on that list, too, as far as quarterbacks that did positive things. So Cam, it's either really, really good or really, really bad. And what Kelvin Benjamin said is true. Cam is not the smartest quarterback as far as reading coverages. He is not the best as far as placing the ball. He does have problems as far as accuracy throwing the football. So if you can just get beyond the messenger, people have been saying this about Cam Newton for a long, long time. I've been saying this about Cam Newton for a long time. He should be better with the football. He should be a more accurate quarterback. At this point in his career, he should do a lot of the smaller things a lot better than what he's doing as far as recognizing coverage, where he's going to put the ball, and the variance of his throws. Cam typically always has a fastball. At this point, he should have developed throwing the football some different ways and throwing to different receivers.
And I don't necessarily disagree with the message. I just think it is an odd messenger. And I understand your point is we got to separate the message from the messenger. But what's also true is Sarah pointed this out before the show today. I mean, the other thing about Kelvin Benjamin is this team that's been a first-round pick on him, reached for him in the first round, was markedly better from a win-loss perspective without him than with him, because he missed that entire 15-1 MVP season, and then once they traded him last year, they went on a bit of a run. They were 21-3 the last 4 years with him, and 21-3 without him, pardon me, and 21-1 with him. So it is an odd messenger. As far as Cam, like, this is a huge year for Cam Newton. Last playoff game that he won or the Panthers won was the great game against Arizona. They blew out the Cardinals to go to the Super Bowl. That was a couple years ago. And Cam, as you mentioned it last year, he was feast or famine at the highest of levels. Now, he played really well in the playoff game, just didn't play well enough, or the team didn't play well enough to beat Drew Brees and the Saints, who played outstanding. But Cam was league MVP in 2015. He was bad in 2016. He had bad stats, but the team won a bunch last year. This is a very important year for Cam Newton, and so all of the things Kelvin Benjamin's talking about, I think, are accurate. They're just maybe a little hyperbolic as far as give me any other quarterback, give me Eli Manning. I don't necessarily buy that stuff.
Right. The truth of the matter is both of them should be a lot better. Kelvin should be a lot better. He should be able to have more of a diversification of routes that he can run. It doesn't make sense for a young wide receiver to be consistently out of shape the way Kelvin Benjamin has been, not only in pro football. When he went to Florida State, they had problems with how his weight was going to be and some other things off the field. So both players should be better than what they are. Now, you might not like Benjamin, but Cam Newton should be better. All right, he has the type of talent because he is a superstar in this league. Now, is that just because of name or ability, or is it based on a performance on the field? We typically don't have superstar players like Cam who are as inconsistent as him. And as you mentioned, it's a big year for Cam. Ownership there. They're under new ownership. Jerry Richardson, the team, he's sold the team. So the management there, how are they going to support Cam? And a lot of that, they got a new offensive coordinator in Norv Turner. What's his influence on Cam? Because I don't believe that Cam Newton, the Mike Shula, the system they used to run, it was very, very successful, and they got good numbers, but it's not the most productive system for a pure throwing quarterback the way Cam should be at this point.
Will that help the completion percentage? A change in the scheme, a change with Norv Turner coming in and things he can do, or is it more on Cam and how he needs to
I'm
fundamentally
concerned
get better?
about how much better Cam can get. It looks like Cam should be better as a passer, but Norv Turner's one of the best teachers of quarterbacks that we've had in the league for a long, long time. If Cam doesn't show that improvement, it won't be because of the coaching, the wide receivers. It will be because of the quarterback.
Do you think Cam realizes that he needs to make this jump? Do you think he's...
I don't like to read people's mind as far as are they awake? Are they self-aware? Typically, when I say things about Cam, Cam is concerned about his wardrobe, his hat selection after the game. There's other things that he should be working on, and accuracy should be number one.
And for what we will see going into this year with the new offensive coordinator, and by the way, they lost Andrew Norwell, one of the best guards in football, to Jacksonville. Their right tackle, just while we were off last week, he went down with an injury. So offensive line's already a little depleted. What we're going to see is if Cam believes he needs to make some fundamental changes in order to get back to the statistical form of 2015, or if that 2015 season will end up being something of an albatross around his neck, where he always looks back and says, I won the damn league MVP playing the way I've always played. Why would I change anything?
Yeah, what's going to happen is door number 2, because I think that one MVP season he will not get to that height again.
All right, coming up, is there a silver lining to Johnny Manziel's rough start in the CFL? That is next on First Things First. Moving on to the NBA, the Rockets might be adding another three-point shooter. According to reports, Houston has considered trying to trade for J.R. Smith. CC, would this be a good move for the Rockets?
Dale Murray, call me, man. What's your boy's name?
You got it. Daryl Moore.
Call me, man, because y'all going to need a team psychologist. Okay? Like, if you're going to sign him, you need to call me, man.
Are you gonna refer him to a psychologist, or you're going to be the psychologist?
No, I can't help him. JR, I had a heart-to-heart with JR last year. Courtside, JR, look at me.
Yeah.
Get your mind right. I need to see your eyes not so glassy, son. Let's go.
All this is true. And JR's response was, where's Nick?
Yeah,
He's nicer to me.
I was like, man, he walking with his wife, man, they went to get a snack.
All that happened.
Yeah, that's
all right,
true.
Listen, JR, the reason you would bring him in is because you've seen him in the finals against the Warriors be a competent player. The reason you wouldn't bring him in is you've seen him at all in the last 2 regular seasons, and he's been brutal the last 2 regular seasons. This guy, people don't think it. I mean, I believe he's going into year 15. He's not a young player. If they can get him for, I don't know who they'd trade for it. I would be surprised. I know Cece's not a
Sarah,
surprise business.
I know you're a little new to this. Be careful asking Nick about Cam Newton and JR.
That's
Be careful.
Oh.
I'm a truth teller, see.
I didn't know this.
I'm nothing but a
Not
truth
for
teller.
them two.
On to the NFL.
No truth.
The
Nick
Browns
Wright.
traded 2016 first-round pick Corey Coleman to the Bills. They'll get a draft pick from Buffalo in exchange for the wide receiver. Cece, what does this mean for the Browns receiving corps?
Well, I'm going to take Browns fans back, okay? That means that, first of all, they think that they have enough wide receiver, but Browns fans, the Carson Wentz trade that they made, Corey Coleman was the first pick that they made with the picks that they.
Yes.
So now they're giving up on him. He's had 100-yard game as an NFL receiver. That was his second game in the league. So he's a small, undersized guy, supposed to be a speed guy. I think only a slot receiver. He does complement Kelvin Benjamin's inability to be able to get deep, though.
All right, from the Browns, though, since the new CBA came in, nothing has been more valuable to teams than those first-round picks because the rookie contract is so much lower than it used to be. You have the fifth-year option. That started in 2011. 2011 to 2016. Every one of their first-round picks is gone. None of them made it to the fifth-year option.
Yeah.
So, like the Browns, that's how you become the Browns. That's how you continue being the Browns. It's not only they had more first-round picks than most teams because they did do some trades, but they also had higher first-round picks than just about anybody. They're all gone. And so, I mean, that's how the Browns are the Browns.
I saw a lot of kids in Canton with Browns jersey on, so your future's bright.
Speaking of a former Brown, Johnny Manziel's CFL debut did not go as planned. Threw 4 interceptions as the Alouettes were blown out 50-11 by his former team, the Hamilton Tiger Cats. CC, what do you make of Manziel's performance?
Well, pro football's tough. I've been telling Nick I thought he would struggle even in the CFL. The coverages are very complicated. There are 12 guys on the field, and there's a lot of pressure on the offense because you only have really 2 downs to convert because it's a 3-down league. So I'm not surprised that he struggled. Also, he has less support from an offensive line and a wide receiver skill standpoint than any of the other teams in the CFL. So I follow the CFL. My son is a star in the CFL. So I'm not surprised that he struggled. Like, you can't think that his career is over because he had one bad game. But this is the worst team in the CFL, and him trying to guide them to wins is going to be difficult.
Listen, it's one of the reasons they had an open quarterback spot was because the team is so under-talented. And my son does not play in the CFL, so I've not followed it for years the way Cris has. But since Cris and I have become close, I've started to follow Saskatchewan, and therefore you follow the rest of the league. So I had an idea of what Johnny was walking into. I didn't see 4 interceptions coming, though. Like, there's playing well, there's playing okay, there's struggling, and then there's 4 interceptions in your first game of pro football in years.
Well, this is the thing. After you get off to a bad start, they can't protect you. You can't run the ball and just run it up and then punt. Like, it's a 2-down, first, second down, and if you try to run on first, you don't get yards. You got to chuck the ball on second. So the system kind of forced him into multiple interceptions after the horrific start.
But here's the other reason why I think this is noteworthy. I think a lot of people have thought, all right, if Johnny can just show that he's healthy as far as off the field, then the NFL will come calling again to give him another try. There is an element to Johnny Manziel totally removed from the addiction issues, totally removed from the off-the-field stuff, where smart people have wondered, wait, was he ever going to be good enough to be an NFL-caliber starting quarterback? And now that you're Johnny's age, plus the baggage that comes along with him, the idea that you would bring him in to be your third string or backup doesn't make a ton of sense. So the reason it's noteworthy is even all the extenuating circumstances C laid out, like, he needs to play great at the CFL level to have a shot to get to an NFL team again. Right now, it's a small sample size as it gets. Like, he had as bad of a start as you can have.
Yeah, Johnny, I think it's more to that. People saying, oh, it's about, going to work on time, being dependable. We haven't seen Johnny play well in professional football. This is what happens to Heisman Trophy winners. They come to pro football and they get crushed. So me thinking that Johnny, if he was going to be successful in the CFL, would lead to an NFL, no, I didn't think that. The CFL is very, very difficult. So this could be Johnny's home compared to using this as a springboard to the NFL.
Okay, we're going to move on to college football and Ohio State. where Urban Meyer remains on administrative leave after questions arose about his handling of domestic violence allegations against one of his assistant coaches back in 2015. Ohio State said in a statement Sunday that the Meyer investigation will come to a close within 14 days. CC, what do you make of this situation?
Well, the Urban Meyer that I know would have responded differently, especially to the press conference, because regardless of some of the horrific news that Urban has been involved with as a coach, I've seen him always try to do the right thing and tell the truth. So that part, as far as the press conference at the Big Ten, that was very, very poor on his behalf of not telling the truth. And typically, in things like this, trying to hide something and not telling the truth, those are the things going to hurt you. I like the fact that the university immediately suspended him once they heard about that. And then Urban has since apologized, because when you are a leader and you don't know if someone's going to tell you the truth, that becomes a hard thing to continue to lead. So I don't know what's going to happen with the investigation. I think that if you look at our history, as far as Jim Tressel and some other things that have happened with the university, I think that they will move fast on this. But I have heard from some of the, because I do have kids on Ohio State's roster that I'm very, very close with, and their parents have gotten encouraging messages from Urban. Now, I personally have not talked to Urban yet. I have a couple messages into him, trying to support him and his family, because I still believe in Urban Meyer. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a good man. But good men make bad decisions in critical times. And that was a bad decision that he made, not revealing that he was familiar with Zach and what the information about Zach's past.
So I have two major takeaways on this, and they're kind of more big picture, but from reading the Brett McMurphy story that he posted on his Facebook page, which was very well reported. One is, in domestic violence situations, and again, it should be clear, I know Urban Meyer's the face of this, but Urban Meyer is, of course, not the person accused of the domestic violence, wasn't the person fired for domestic violence. That was assistant coach Zach Smith. In domestic violence situations, men always have the power. And I don't just mean the alleged perpetrator or the perpetrator. It's typically men around that person, either friends or colleagues or people. It's typically men that have the power to impact the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator's life in a negative way that might actually have real consequences that the victim cannot. Because we know, why don't women leave? Well, the number one time a woman is most likely to be killed in a domestic violence situation is trying to leave the relationship. We know how, or we should know, how dangerous those situations are. And a lot of times, the women involved, they think, well, this man does support the family. If I go to the authorities, is he going to lose his job? What about the kids? Like, it's the hardest person song is obviously for the women. But my other major takeaway is just us in the media and how we talk about these things. And we do a bad job on focusing on, we focus on the more famous person. Listen, what Urban Meyer did at Media Day was wrong. Lying was wrong. And you can make a strong argument that Urban Meyer not firing Zach Smith almost a decade ago, when the allegations first came out, was wrong. But Urban Meyer is not the most wrong person here. Zach Smith is. And I saw a similar thing happen with the Joe Paterno scandal. That was the Jerry Sandusky scandal. And I'm not alleviating any type of, I'm not saying Joe Paterno didn't do anything wrong, but because nobody knows who Zach Smith is. You do, see, like, you know what I mean? But the person watching this show just knows an assistant coach at Ohio State. And the further we get away from the actual perpetrator, the further we get away from the victims. And whether it's Jerry Sandusky and those poor kids, and we focus on Paterno, and are they taking down a statue, or Urban Meyer and this, and then we're removing it from Courtney Smith, the alleged victim, the person that I believe was a true repeated victim. And so I understand why we talk about the more famous person. I get it, and I understand what's the strong take on Zach Smith. You shouldn't, I get it. There's not going to be a debate there, but to me, it does a disservice to the people most adversely affected. Because the people most adversely affected by this, what happens to Urban Meyer does not impact them truly one way or the other.
Cris, you bring up the players. What's the challenge during these times for the players, for the team, for the kids?
The challenge right now is to stay focused. is to stay focused, even though your leader is under attack. How do I focus on what I'm going to do? They have a very, very good football team, have a young quarterback, and trying to transition to him taking over the program. That's the hard thing, because typically you come to a university, you say, I come there for the university, I come for the education, I come for the program, but typically you come there also because the personality of the head coach. So it's hard to be able to separate that in a young person's life. They just started practice on Saturday, getting ready for the upcoming season, which they consider it to be a big season for them. So for young people, it's really, really hard for them to be able to focus on what's real and what's not real, and what about my future if they decide to remove him as the head coach.
Does this change the landscape at all of the Big Ten?
Well, listen, if Urban Meyer is not the head coach of Ohio State, they'll still be Ohio State. But we have seen repeatedly the force of nature that major college football coaches are. Like, Alabama was still Alabama, but it kind of wasn't until Nick Saban got there. Like, it had been before, and then it wasn't for a long time. Like, the Ohio State had great era under Earl Bruce. It had kind of a drier time, a great era under Jim Tressel, and they needed Urban Meyer. Like, so yes, I mean, it would to me.
Ohio State for the last 100 years has produced first rounders regardless of who the coach was. A variety of top great names have been the head coach. Most of them have been fired as the head coach. So we're going to get blue chip players because it's Ohio State. All right. He was able to follow up the great legacy of Jim Tressel with a national championship. So when you look at that, 2 out of the last 5 after Woody, they won national championships. So the players are going to be there. We got the facilities, got the education, you got the conference, you got the TV market. So the Buckeyes, as I tell Nick all the time, we've been good in football for over 100 years, and it's beyond the coach.
More First Things First coming up after this. Welcome back to First Things First. Super Bowl champ Chris Canty joining us.
Hey now.
What up, big man? Appreciate your help last week.
I've been trying to ask him to wear
you on vacation, got your tan on.
Man,
I ain't even mad at you.
Is that a thing?
No, you can't force them. Typically, the rings are so big, and you worry about something happening to it. So, no, you can't force him. There are big days, though, he will decide to wear it. Like, it's just not today.
He wore it once last week, and I thought it was a daily thing.
Because I was doing my daily radio show from Giants training camp on last Monday.
Humpty and Canny.
Humpty and Canny, 98.7 ESPN. Shameless plug. Yeah.
No.
So that was an appropriate time to wear it at the beginning of the season. You know, you break it out around playoff time as we gear up for the Super Bowl. You know,
right. Just make sure we
to
put it
remind
on
folks.
The intro. Super Bowl champ. That's what's important.
I like it. I like it. Well, speaking of the Giants, let's talk about Odell Beckham Jr. He spoke with reporters over the weekend, seeming optimistic about getting a contract extension, saying, quote, it will work itself out. Another thing Beckham is optimistic about is the Giants' season, saying he wants to hang a banner. Chris Canty, what has to happen for Odell Beckham Jr. and the Giants to contend for a Super Bowl?
Well, it's going to have to be one of the more explosive offenses in the NFL. And when I say that, I'm talking about an offense that's going to score north of 24 points a game. It's going to have to be a top 5 scoring offense, because when you look at everything they have invested on the offensive side of the ball in draft capital and salaries, you recognize that those guys are going to have to be the catalyst for the Giants to be competitive this season. I like some of the pieces that they have on the defensive side of the ball, being able to trade for Alec Ogletree this offseason and seeing what they did with Olivier Vernon, bringing him in a few years ago, along with Snacks Harrison and Janoris Jenkins. They have some playmakers on that side of the ball, but they don't have a ton of depth. When you look at every single level of that defense, you see that there's not a lot of guys on that second unit that are proven commodities in our league. So ultimately, it's going to have to be the offense being able to dominate, being able to score a lot of points, dictate to the game, control time of possession, and then that defense, they're going to have to be complementary.
All right, so for the Giants to contend for a Super Bowl, I think people would expect me to talk about Eli, to bang on Eli Manning, because I don't think Eli Manning is a top flight or close to a quarterback.
You got it in
but
there.
Let's just.
But
hold on.
Because you could have just continued just saying whatever else you were going to say.
I was explaining for our new viewers why would they expect Nick to bang on Eli Manning? Well, why? Because that's why. However.
Because he thinks Eli's garbage.
I didn't say. See, now you got that in there. I didn't say. I wouldn't go quite that far. But let's just say Eli's good. Let's just say Eli plays really well this year. What do they still need to then contend for a Super Bowl, right? To be at that portion of the league. I need Olivier Vernon to play the way I think he's capable of playing. I know the Giants think he's capable of playing, and that's not a 10-sack guy. That's a contend for the sack championship type of guy. I need the secondary to be far better than it was last year. It's not just first-round picks back there, but high-priced free agents they've gone out and gotten. Like, I need you're saying they have to do it by scoring 24 points a game. I don't necessarily, I'm not saying you're wrong, but with the money they spent a couple off seasons ago, and I know JPP's gone now, and the draft capital they've spent on the back end of that secondary, why can't the defense be a major reason that they would be a really good team? Why can't this be a team, I think it would have to be a team that the defense is one of their strong points if they're going to be, not only compete in the NFC East, compete in the NFC, but to compete for a Super Bowl.
Well, I'll say this, they had one of the worst run defenses in the league, and I'm not going to say that they got better by trading away JPP. Now, they say that might have been a chemistry thing, but, you know, when you look at that defensive front, you got to have guys that can stop the run, that can allow the linebackers to run and hit and flow over the top.
Outside of Damon Harris.
They don't have those guys outside of Snacks Harrison.
Yeah.
Dalvin Tomlinson, we saw some flashes, but he wasn't very consistent last year. So you're looking at that. You look at Olivier Vernon, he's a proven commodity as a pass rusher, even though he's not a 15, 20 sack guy. He's always around 10 to 12 sacks. The only problem is, who's the guy that's going to be rushing the passer opposite of him? Right. You don't have that guy. So a lot of offenses are going to game plan and try to scheme Olivier Vernon out of being able to be a factor in terms of generating the pass rush. So when I see teams that are contending for championships on the defensive side of the ball, they usually have 3 or 4 guys that can consistently win one-on-ones and get after the quarterback. And the Giants just don't have that. I like Connor Barwin, but he's seen better days. I mean, he's a guy that's a piece, but he's not the answer. So the Giants are going to need one of those young guys, whether it's Romeo Okwara, Lorenzo Carter, Kareem Martin, somebody to step up and do something that we haven't seen. I know what I'm getting from Olivier Vernon. I just don't know what I'm getting from the other group of pass rushers, and thereby I don't know what kind of defense you're going to have.
Yeah, Canty, he brings up some great points as far as the Giants and when the Giants have been good. In our conversations, man, there's been a theme with this franchise. I love this franchise. They do things the right way. They're very, very classy. But when they have won at a high level, it has never been with the offense scoring upwards of 24 points, all right? Not only just the weather, just the style. The Giants fans, that intensity for which they play with the physical approach. So now we're saying that, okay, they're going to be an offensive-dominated team in this NFC where we got a bunch of quarterbacks that can score points. So I think that's a problem. Now, from a personnel standpoint, let's just take a look. On the defensive side, you talked about up front and the linebacker core. Linebacker core is questionable, too. Can they cover? You know, can they come downhill and take people out of their running game? But Eli Apple at the left corner spot is a huge question mark. Janoris Jenkins coming off an awful season, also coming off a bad offseason where his brother allegedly murdered another guy in his house. So I don't know where he's sleeping, but I can guarantee you trying to have your mind at rest as you approach this season to be a very, very important season for him. Now let's go on the offensive side of the ball. I'll stay with the same theme of their skilled guys. Cody Lattimore. You guys know who he is?
Denver Broncos draft.
Oh, yeah. He's scheduled to start opposite of Odell Beckham. Yep. Now, do I think he can have 60, 70 catches, 1,000-yard season? That's what you have to have opposite of a star like Odell. So he's a huge question mark, and Eric Flowers at that right tackle, he is not going nowhere. And like I tell people,
keep trying to find places to hide him, CC. They keep trying.
When we used to have a scouting report for people like Eric Flowers, I used to let the guy know, man, our scouting department knows you. You can't hide. We know you can't play. They can't help you enough. And that's the story with Eric Flowers in his inability to be a quality offensive lineman. Now, I know he's not playing left tackle. Nate Solder will be playing the left tackle. But even at right tackle, we have so many premier rushers that play left end.
Listen, it's so tough. Like, right now, there's a market inefficiency as far as there are so many more excellent pass rushers than there are excellent offensive linemen. Like, maybe that's about the college rules or just the athletes that are coming, whatever it is. It's hard to have enough offensive linemen in this league, and it seems like every team's got pass rushers. But on the offensive side, listen, bringing up the number 2 wide receiver is a very fair critique, and, of course, Eric Flowers. But you look at, they spend the number 2 pick on a running back. They have Odell. I like Sterling Shepard as a slot guy. I think Evan Ingram is poised to have a big year, even though he and Eli Apple just got kicked out of practice a couple days ago for getting into a little skirmish. And they spent the money on Nate Solder. They spent their next draft pick after Barkley on the left guard from UTEP, Will Hernandez. And so when we're talking about questions on offense, they have, to me, fewer, if you remove the quarterback, than the majority of other teams. So I understand Canty's point as far as the offense you think has some of the personnel to be dynamic. I get that part of it, which is why I was focusing on the defense.
Well, I guess the way I was looking at it is you tell me what type of football team you want to be by where you put your draft capital. And when you look at the high draft picks that Dave Gettleman and the past regime have on the offensive side of the ball, you're saying these are our playmakers. So Odell Beckham Jr., first-round draft pick. Saquon Barkley, second overall pick. Evan Ingram, first-round draft pick. Eli Manning, first-round draft pick.
Even Eric Flowers.
Eric Flowers, a first-round draft pick. Nate Solder, even though you bought him over from the free agency from the Patriots, first-round draft pick. You're telling me what you want. Sterling Shepard, second-rounder. Will Hernandez, second-rounder. You're telling me what you want to be when you invest on that side of the ball with those draft picks. So that's why I say that has to be the identity. And listen, we would say that we would be disappointed if Saquon Barkley, from a production standpoint, isn't a 1,500 yards from scrimmage, 15-plus touchdown guy, because that's what you're typically getting from a running back that you take in the top 5. In the last 2 teams, in the last 2 drafts that have taken running backs in the top 5, they ended up in the playoffs. So that's my expectations for the Giants. If they're going to do it, they have far more people to do it on the offensive side of the ball than the defensive side of the ball. That's why I say that's going to be their identity. That's why if they're going to be a postseason team, it's going to have to be an explosive unit.
Sarah, I believe you asked me the important question privately is who is the head coach? Who is Pat Shurmur? What is he going to do? Is he going to have an explosive offense? Or is he going to be like the guy in Cleveland who some people question, was he authoritative enough? Now, OBJ, he's already been associated with 2 coaches being fired. One being Tom Coughlin, who is a disciplinarian, and McAdoo, who was the coach last year. Him getting fired was definitely a reaction to Odell Beckham and him not being able to be on the same page. So, yes, the coach, huge question marks as far as him and his leadership.
All right, Chris Canty, you're going to stay right there for us. Coming up, why is a former teammate ripping Cam Newton? That's next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First with Chris Canty. Bills wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin spent his first 3.5 seasons in the league in Carolina, and turns out he wasn't very fond of his old quarterback, Cam Newton. Benjamin told The Athletic, "I should have just been drafted by somebody else. I should have never went to Carolina. It was a bad fit from the get-go. If you would have put me with any other quarterback, let's be real, any other accurate quarterback like Rodgers or Eli Manning or Big Ben, anybody, quarterbacks with knowledge that know how to place a ball and give you a better chance to catch the ball. It just felt like I wasn't in that position." Chris Canty, are you surprised by Benjamin's comments about Cam?
A little bit, and I'm not surprised by the comment itself. It seems like it's one of those Captain Obvious statements because it's true. I just wish that Kelvin Benjamin didn't say it. Now, part of the reason the Carolina Panthers drafted him in 2014 was because he had a wide catch radius because you knew you had an inaccurate quarterback. Cam Newton is one of those guys that's so physically gifted that he doesn't necessarily pay attention to the fundamentals of the position. Footwork is not necessarily the best when it comes to being able to deliver the football, especially in the pocket. So, yeah, that's one of the things that we recognize, but Cam Newton, I don't think we can look at as just a prototypical pocket passer. He does so many other things from the quarterback position that correlate with winning, that translate to being able to compete at the highest level. You look at what he did in that MVP season that he had a few years back. I mean, he was just an explosive player, not just as a passer, but as a runner, a dual threat type of quarterback, and that translated into a lot of wins for the Carolina Panthers team. So, I mean, I understand where Kelvin Benjamin is taking it, but y'all did a lot of winning in Carolina when he was down there. So, I mean, you look at Cam Newton in the NFC South, a tough division. It's the only division in pro football that's got 3 MVP quarterbacks. You look at that. They were the only repeat winner in that division's history. I think they went back to back to back, and there was a span of 3 years where they won the NFC South 3 straight years. So, I mean, you can complain about Cam Newton not necessarily playing the quarterback position at the highest level, but he always gives you a chance to win.
But I am excited, though, because very rarely in sports do we get a true, test case of something someone says. Kelvin Benjamin says, put me with any other quarterback. Well, lucky you. We got you on a team with A.J. McCarron, Nate Peterman, and a rookie in Josh Allen, who, if he plays this year, he will be as raw as any rookie quarterback we've seen, even if you believe in Josh Allen long term. So let's see if that's true. Because even if you thought Kelvin Benjamin was disappointing in Carolina, last year in Carolina, he averaged 4 catches, 60 yards, 15 yards a catch, with a couple touchdowns in his half season there. In his half season in Buffalo, that was down to less than 3 catches a game, 36 yards a game, less than 14 yards per catch, with 1 touchdown his whole time there. So if it really was Cam, because I think some of his comments are accurate, I also think he's the worst messenger for this. Not only because you shouldn't take shots at a former teammate, but because what about Kelvin? Kelvin Benjamin's got a lot of wide receiver traits that are similar to Cam Newton's quarterback traits. Physically gifted, almost oversized for the position, and has not made the most of it. Like, see, you're the route running expert. Like, would you say Kelvin Benjamin is running precise? If it needs to be cut off at 8, he's cutting off at 8. He's got his hips turned in the right direction. Like,
no, sir.
Right. And so I feel like there's a little bit of projection in these comments, even if we all know, of course, Cam should be more accurate. Of course, his fundamentals, particularly his footwork, should be better. And too often he relies on the fact that he's one of the greatest athletes ever to play that position to get him out of trouble spots.
Last season, Cam Newton, only Deshaun Kaiser had more games with a passer rating below 70. All right, Deshaun Kaiser, the Browns gave up on, was a second-round pick, shipped him off to Green Bay. And also on the other side, Alex Smith, Tom Brady are the only ones that had more games with Cam Newton, the passer rating over 120. Now, that's not the disparity that you ever want. So Cam Newton and Kelvin Benjamin are a lot alike. Both of them have the potential to be all-pro, but neither one has made the type of adjustments that I think it takes to be great. Kelvin Benjamin is a wide receiver. He had the same problem in college, being overweight. He is a big body type. He's always going to be a big man, but as a wide receiver, it makes no sense to be out of shape and be a professional athlete. Now, he said he was going through a grieving phase as far as his mother this offseason, or the offseason that he had problems with Carolina 2 offseasons ago. That's no excuse for not being in shape, because even if you're going through some things traumatic in your life, it only takes 2 hours, hour and a half to get your workout in. You're supposed to be a professional. So Cam Newton and Benjamin have some of the same qualities. They should be better at this point in their career. Now, you might not like the messenger. Cam Newton should be a better quarterback. Kelvin Benjamin should be a better receiver. He is not better off with some other quarterback than he was with Cam. And he is getting ready to see that, man, there are the haves and the have-nots in the NFL. And he is getting ready to be thrown the ball by the have-nots and younger talent that is not proven. So the message is accurate. Cam Newton should be better. Now, you might not like the messenger, but the message is clear. Cam is a superstar, and he should play like it and have the consistency of a superstar.
Cris, what will help Cam get to that level? Will bringing in Norv Turner help him be more effective and more accurate with his passing? What will get him to play the way in which his God-given talents should have him playing at?
Well, Sarah, if Norv Turner can't fix him, then nobody can fix him. I mean, CC, you know that better than anybody. Yeah. Norv Turner has been able to work with a lot of different quarterbacks with a lot of different styles throughout the years, but he's always been able to make that translate into production. He's always had explosive offenses. So the Carolina Panthers brought him in with the idea that Cam Newton, if we're ever going to get the best out of his physical gifts, it's going to have to be this guy. And I think Norv Turner will be creative enough and play to Cam's skill sets. It's just a matter of, will Cam step up to the challenge, and will he, answer the bell when it comes to all the criticism that we've had with his fundamentals at the position.
What does Norv Turner do from an offensive standpoint? He loves to run the ball. He loves to be physical. So the match between him and Carolina is a good match. What does he do from a passing standpoint? He likes to protect the quarterback. All right, so he has good, sound protection, but he likes to throw the ball deep down the field. That is Norv Turner. Cam Newton, that's not something that he can always do consistently without the play action. Can he throw the ball deep just off a straight drop back? That part right there is going to have to be proven.
Real quick on Kelvin Benjamin being out of shape, just because I know this is one of your pressure points. C, if you're a professional athlete, it's the offseason. What's the only thing you got to do during the day?
I ain't got to get up and run. That's all I got to do is get up and run.
And then the rest of the day, what
it's mine. I don't have no professors. I don't have no exams. I don't have no study hall. Like,
you ain't got to go clock in at some part-time job.
No.
So you got to set your alarm. You got to wake up.
You don't even have to set your alarm. You don't have to work out
whenever you want to get up. Whenever you want to get up.
Man, you can work out whenever you want to. It's not that difficult.
Stacey does not like the pro athlete that is not in tip-top shape.
Well, it's like someone on this job, I don't like to read. It's going to be a problem. I mean, it's going to be a problem.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.